Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Phil Hearn, and I'm the Senior Content Development Coordinator on the Project MUSE Publisher Relations team. I started at Project MUSE on the production team just as the UPCC eBooks program was launching in 2011. So I've had the honor to watch Books on MUSE expand to where it is today. My focus on the Publisher Relations team is to work with our participating book publishers and to continue to grow our eBooks program. I'm here to discuss what's next for books on Project MUSE. So throughout the course of my talk, please feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. So before we talk about what's next, let's take a look at 2020 and what it meant for book content on Project MUSE. So despite the uncertainty and challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, Books on MUSE continue to grow at almost our fastest pace since launching books nearly 10 years ago. Thanks to the incredible work of our production team, we launched just under 10,000 books on our platform in 2020. This marks the largest number of books that we've launched in 1 year since 2012 when the program launched. So working from home didn't slow down our team one bit. Kelly has already mentioned the content that publishers opened up for free during the height of the pandemic. This included 24,000 books on MUSE, in addition to the over 3,000 titles that are already permanently open access on the platform. So nearly 40% of the books on the MUSE platform were available to any users in the world without authentication in a time when institutional authentication was a challenge for a huge number of users. So due in large part to this push, book chapters were accessed nearly 25 million times by users around the world in 2020, which is just an incredible number. We were also happy to welcome 15 new participating book publishers to Project MUSE last year, including several open access only presses. While I'm sure that everybody here has a certain amount of Zoom fatigue, myself included, the ability to connect with so many of you and connect names with faces through this technology was a real silver lining to the toughest months of the pandemic. So despite a world of challenges, books on MUSE kept growing in 2020, setting us up for what's next. And let me just take a moment to welcome individually each one of those new participating book publishers that joined MUSE in the last year and a half. This is a truly diverse group of publishers bringing their content to Project MUSE, from front list of hundreds of titles to just one or two, from South America to Europe, open access and gated books alike, university presses and independent nonprofit publishers, covering content across the humanities and social sciences. I'm also thrilled to see that a number of our new publishers are attending this meeting right now, many for the first time from around the world, something that might not have been possible if this meeting were in person in Baltimore as usual. So again, I want to welcome and thank you again for joining us. As the main part of my presentation today, I'd like to introduce you to a brand new business model that we're developing at Project MUSE, custom book collections. As the books model on Project MUSE nears its 10th anniversary, which again is easy for me to remember since it will coincide with my own 10-year anniversary at MUSE, we've learned a whole lot about the needs of both our publishers and our library customers. With this wealth of knowledge and experience, we've been hard at work completely redesigning the way we package and sell books on our platform, as well as our internal workflows for ingesting and launching content from our publishers. Before I introduce this new model with you, I'd like to walk through the existing model to highlight some of the challenges it presented, and also how we intend to address those challenges with our new model. I'll also note right away that what I'm about to describe only refers to backlist content and collections on MUSE. Our model for selling current year books before they have been published is an entirely different process, and I'll speak more on that later. Also, just a note that to demonstrate that we're talking about something that's older and that is fading away, I have used a black and white color scheme in these graphics to illustrate that. All right, so let's get started. For backlist titles, here is how our model and process have worked. First, the publisher delivers files and metadata for the book. Then, Project MUSE assigns the book to the appropriate subject collections based on key criteria. That criteria would include subject. So MUSE would review the BISAC codes, the Library of Congress subject headings, and any other relevant data to make a subject determination. And then the original publication date. So this way, we confirm that the book is older, that it's not intended to launch in a current year front list collection. It should go into a backlist subject collection. And then the file delivery date. So this would determine which collection a book lands in because our collections have been finalized and sold on annual cycles. So the file delivery date did matter as far as which collection the book landed. So once the collection is assigned, it would go into our production queue and be prioritized based on collection. Then in October of each year, our slate of backlist collections for sale in the subsequent year will be finalized. These collections, which we call archive, were originally conceived with a foundation collection the first year, and then in each of the following years, there would be a supplement, which is a top-off collection that libraries could use to top off that foundation collection. So a simple example is the first year of these collections, we had the Archive History Foundation in 2012. The following year was the Archive History Supplement in 2013, and then the Archive History Supplement 2 in 2014, all the way up to this year, 2021. So all of these titles in these archive collections would launch once the new year hit on January 1st. So only then would the book appear on the Project MUSE platform. So why revise this model? For years, this has worked well for a loyal set of institutions who prefer to buy backlist books this way, topping off each year. But nearly 10 years in, with hundreds of backlist collections to navigate at this point, the model has begun to show its cracks. First off, the manual collection assignment of thousands of backlist books every year has been an expensive and time-consuming process for our small staff to maintain. Beyond our technical production process, which involves converting files and metadata for display on the site, setting chapter-level metadata, creating MARC records, etc. This job of fitting these rich interdisciplinary titles into a limited number of preset collections manually is an arduous process. And due to this annual collection cycle and the time-consuming process for producing backlist titles, we had to set difficult to meet deadlines for those books for publishers in order to guarantee that the books would be available in their collections each year. So while we tried our best to be as flexible as possible with publisher timelines, any books received after the summer might miss our window for landing in these preset collections and would take over a year to launch. So we would never know for sure what backlist titles a publisher might send and when, since understandably, the digitization schedule of a backlist can be a rolling and unpredictable process, especially for us as an aggregator. So supplemental collections were established as we received titles, not based on any other criteria beyond the subject. So to go back to my earlier example, there's nothing that makes a book appropriate for Archive History Supplement 2 versus Archive History Supplement 5 beyond which year we received it in. Also, books could only go into one major subject collection and one major area studies collection. So a book on church history could fit into our Archive History collection or our Archive Philosophy and Religion collection, but not both. With these subject areas so broad, some collections were likely prohibitively large for certain institutions. This likely limited the reach of certain interdisciplinary titles as well. As I mentioned, books could not be in multiple subject collections to avoid conflicts, since we also could not deduplicate books for libraries. Collections were static and locked. This also leads to another key barrier to sale, which is overlap between single title purchases, and collection purchases might disincentivize collection purchases for anybody who's already purchased single titles because they don't want to purchase duplicate content in those collections, and our system was not yet equipped to deduplicate that for them. And perhaps most crucial to our publishers is the annual launch schedule. And the link between collection launch date in our system meant that there was often a meaningful delay between a publisher distributing the title to MUSE and the book being available on the platform. regardless of how quickly we may have been able to prepare it for the platform otherwise. Most backlist content would launch in January, no matter when we received it. So I am thrilled to announce that we will be launching this new custom book collections model this coming fall 2021 in time for this year's library purchase cycle. This completely revamped model introduces a dynamic approach to collection building, allowing us to custom create book packages to meet each library's needs and limits. So let's walk through the launch of a backlist title in the new custom book collections model. And you will notice that this model involves a little more color because it is brand new, just like the season of spring that we are in right now. So publisher delivers files and metadata via the same methods that they always have. That has not and will not change. Then our production staff prepares the book to launch on our platform. And then the book launches. There is no more manual collection assignment of a backlist title. There's no more arbitrary launch date based on static collections and annual sales cycles. Then after a book launches, our sales team can work individually with each library to create custom collections of any book that's launched on MUSE at that time based on a number of criteria. That can include subject, publication year, publisher, the price of each book, the number of titles in a collection, and more. There are no more one-size-fits-all static backlist collections that are created by the MUSE staff. Now, the libraries get to create their own collections, meaning that each individual backlist title can appear in a limitless variety of collections. Each of these collection criteria is just a starting point as well. So for example, a library could choose to purchase only public health titles, regardless of any other criteria. Or they could put together a more hodgepodge collection of literature and political science, but only titles published prior to 2019. Or a library could choose to purchase all currently available titles from a specific publisher or a specific set of publishers, the most recent titles that don't exceed 500 books. The possibilities are truly endless. This newly dynamic model requires a significant technical overhaul of our system, both on the back and front end. But fortunately, our in-house tech team is up to this huge task. Among the improvements and new features our tech team are developing will be the ability for our system to automatically deduplicate titles that are already part of an institution's MUSE holdings in any custom built collection, so that this also makes it simpler to top off in the future based on the same or adjusted criteria. Essentially, there is no longer any risk of double dipping for a library. There's also this new infrastructure for metadata ingestion in order to automate the flow of data through to front-end custom collection creation tools. And then there's also those custom creation tools. So those will be robust enough to maximize library options using all those collection criteria in a way that is both intuitive and simple to put together for our sales team and the libraries to build the perfect collections for them. And now, finally, the backlist titles will launch within weeks of delivery to MUSE, no matter what. They will be available for inclusion in any custom book collection the moment that they launch. And there will be no more annual delivery deadlines for backlist content for our publishers. So you no longer have to mark a date on your calendar for delivering backlist books. These custom collections will be derived from the metadata publishers send us and then selected by each library so that no two collections are the same. They can build collections by subject, so the BISAC or BIC codes from the metadata, and then through an enhanced discipline mapping system in our own system. The original publication year, so we'll be putting in new checks in place to ensure the accuracy of this date from the metadata. We're looking for the year the content was first published, not the year that it was digitized. By publisher, you. So again, publisher collections will now be possible on Project MUSE through this new model. Price, the institutional price of each book. And I'll get to this in just a little more in a moment. And the number of titles. From a handful to thousands, there will be no limit to the number of titles that a library can include in their custom collection. and more. Series, author, etc. As I mentioned, this is all just the starting point. So really, a collection can be anything that a library wants it to be. So an important question, how will these custom book collections be priced? So collection price will be a function of the institutional price of each book as pulled from the publisher metadata, the size and type of the institution purchasing the collection. That's based on the Carnegie classification or equivalent, and the number of books in a collection. So discounts, if applicable, will be determined by these two latter criteria. The institutional discount means that a major institution like Harvard will pay more for a collection than a small community college or high school. This would include a multiplier in the cases of any shared access across university systems or library consortia. And also the volume discount, that means that the more books that are included in a collection purchase, the larger the overall discount will be. At this point, it's important to point out that a number of things that have worked in our previous collections model will be remaining the same. As I mentioned, collection discounts will still be determined by a Carnegie classification or the equivalent if unavailable to determine size and type of institution purchasing. This has always been the case in our collections model. The difference is that now each collection will be custom built for each institution rather than us determining custom pricing from dozens of preset collections to fit a specific institution's classification. The revenue distribution and reporting will remain unchanged. Publishers will still receive the same share of each collection sale of their titles. The process of uploading books and metadata will remain generally the same, with some quality of life enhancements and adjustments that will accommodate this new model. Helen McDermott, our ebook production coordinator, will be speaking more about this later today. The front end user experience will remain unchanged as well. No matter how a book is sold or purchased on the site, a user's experience of that book is uniform. That also includes our downstream activities, including linking and discovery partners, MARC record creation, preservation, all will remain equally robust. And most importantly, I'll remind you that current year collections for future titles will remain in place. This means that you will continue to receive a web form from us each summer, asking you to estimate the number of titles you expect to send MUSE in the subsequent year. And we will continue to ask for metadata one season ahead of time for front list books. We do have a substantial number of libraries that top off current year collections each year and prefer to purchase titles this way. So while a number of the efficiencies of the custom book collections model will feed into the current year collection workflows, we're not yet in a place to relaunch that model. That said, the moment a book launches on Project MUSE, it will be eligible for custom collections purchasing. So what does this mean for publishers? Well, as I've explained, it means that there will be no more arbitrary launch delays due to collection assignment. Because of this, that means there will also be no more annual deadlines for backlist books. The publisher institutional pricing of each individual book will feed more directly into the overall collection price due to the dynamic nature of the way these collections are put together. This will dramatically increase the possibility for each backlist book to be sold on MUSE. So where before a backlist title might be buried in enormous annualized collections, your titles will now have a vastly improved path to reaching institutional purchase, with the ultimate goal of providing you more revenue for the backlist titles on our platform. And it is launching this fall. So we will be in touch with you as this program comes to fruition. And we'll be transparent with any documentation or updates so that you will be able to prepare on your end. As I mentioned, our hope is for this new model to make things simpler rather than more complicated on your side. So you may even see our specs and templates become more simplified and streamlined. So stay tuned for much more information on this in the coming months. Next, I would like to talk to you briefly about our revised MUSE Books Agreement, which lays the groundwork for this new custom book collections model and also includes a number of other adjustments and clarifications that you should know about. Many of you have already seen this agreement, and it's been a great opportunity to touch base with you all about your ebook strategies. If you haven't yet heard from us though, we're still working through them, so stay tuned. So what is in this new agreement? One of the main goals of this agreement was to consolidate the terms of our previous riders, looping in many of our legacy publishers into programs that they were not yet participating in. So this includes our agreement for preservation through Portico, meaning that every ebook you distribute to MUSE is automatically preserved in their system. The agreement also consolidates our single title sales terms, which enable sales to institutions through library storefronts, Gobi and Oasis. In addition, the agreement now includes open access terms, opening the door for publishers who have not yet participated in MUSE Open to begin sending us OA titles whenever ready. So if you've already signed our updated agreement, your press is all set to participate in each of these programs. Above all else, this new agreement was a way for us to more clearly lay out the terms of our different business models, as well as to codify a handful of adjustments that we expect publishers will welcome. Firstly, this agreement lays out the groundwork for the forthcoming custom books collections model. Functionally, since revenue distribution will remain the same as our old collection models, this is not a dramatic difference. The process of forming this agreement did help us, though, think through these terms in the most clear and evergreen terms possible. And just a moment. There we go. Most publishers who submit books to MUSE choose to opt their titles in for single title sale as an additional path for purchase beyond collections. To make this process easier for publishers, this agreement codifies an opt-out rather than opt-in for single title sales. So publishers may opt out of this program, but unless they choose to do so, titles will be opted in by default. Some other terms were included to begin defining a program for selling book content to individuals. This is a future project, and it would be an opt-in requiring an additional rider. So nothing's changing and you're not in this program yet because it's still being scoped, but I'll note that this gestures toward the future-proof philosophy behind this new contract. We have also updated and clarified our terms around EBA, evidence-based acquisitions, regarding both the payment and reporting structure for these sales. To illustrate the updates to our EBA terms, let me run through a simplified explanation of our single title sales revenue breakdown. So for single title sales, the net sales revenue equals the single title sale price of each individual book minus third-party vendor fees. So just as in our collection sales, for single title sales, the publisher receives 70% of net sales revenue for their content sales on MUSE. But with single title sales, MUSE partners with third-party vendors, Gobi and Oasis to facilitate. These are the preferred storefronts of the vast majority of institutions around the world. So before arriving at net sales revenue, we need to pay these third-party vendor fees to process each sale. Publishers then receive 70% of that remaining value. The EBA sales revenue breakdown is a little simpler. Through 2020, EBA sales have been processed and reported as single title sales. For single title sales, as I just illustrated, we first pay a fee to our vendor, Gobi or Oasis, for each sale, and then return 70% of the remaining net to publishers. EBA originally launched as a pilot project that ran through similar processes as single title sales, with the vendor fees invested in processing, supporting, and growing the EBA pilot program. But now we have fully optimized our internal processes to fully differentiate EBA purchases from the title by title model processed by third parties. This means that the MUSE processed EBA sales will now be returning more money to publishers. Since a lot of publishers have asked about this program, let's take a moment to go through how EBA works on Project MUSE. So as far as eligibility, any books in our system that are opted into the single title sales program are eligible for EBA programs. In an EBA program, an institution works with our sales team to identify a dollar amount that they're willing to commit to spend on single title purchases. They make this commitment at the beginning of the term of their EBA program. The scope of titles included in this program will vary depending on an institution's needs. It may be all single title eligible books. It may just be a small subset of them based on specific criteria like subject. So once the scope of the titles included and the dollar amount are agreed upon, MUSE will provide an institution with access to that content for the length of the term, which is usually 12 months. At the end of the term, the institution will make purchase decisions based on that usage. And we have found that institutions truly make these decisions in good faith based on what their users have found valuable. And based on the huge success of EBA, especially in elevating the sales of backlist titles, users have been fantastic at identifying valuable titles in the MUSE corpus. And EBA continues to grow. About 60% of annual single title sales in 2020 were through the EBA program. This also matches the all-time EBA sales number versus title by title sales through Gobi and Oasis. Lifetime EBA sales have now overtaken those title by title numbers, despite the program being several years younger. So now these sales will clearly be reflected in your biannual reporting, broken out by sales type. And as I mentioned, EBA programs have been particularly strong for backlist titles, bringing new sales to titles that have been on our platform for years. Once a title is on MUSE, we really want to bring it as many opportunities to return revenue to publishers as possible. And EBA has been a strong and growing example of that. So if you haven't yet signed our new agreement, please contact me or Kelly and we will start the process with you. So we have talked a lot about sales models this morning, but open access also remains a huge focus and area of growth for Project MUSE. Over the last year, we have made significant investments in our open access content. To close out my presentation this morning, let's take a glimpse at OA books on MUSE. We now have 3,700 OA books on MUSE from 77 publishers, with over 1,400 OA books launched just in 2020. For open access titles newly launched on Project MUSE, we typically charge a once per title fee of $100 to partially cover the costs of hosting, production, conversion, mark record creation, DOI distribution, and all the downstream activities that work to make OA books discoverable. But due to COVID-19, we decided to extend our fee waiver for open access titles through the end of the calendar year to try to minimize any burden on publishers during such an uncertain year. And we were thrilled that so many publishers chose to take advantage of this waiver and send us so many open access books last year. So that really fed into that huge number that we launched in 2020. And also due to this influx of OA titles, as well as the increased usage across MUSE due to the free period at the peak of the pandemic, OA books on MUSE had over 2 million views from around the world in 2020. Here's a graph of the usage of open access books on MUSE last year. You can clearly see when the COVID-19 pandemic immediately and dramatically increased demand and usage for free to access content on the platform. The temporary free period for such a large percentage of MUSE content also drove users to explore the OA content that was discoverable right alongside it on the MUSE platform. Also, interestingly, you can see that when the free period ended, usage also returned to its steady baseline for OA books come the fall semester as people got adjusted. As Kelly mentioned, this free period garnered significant goodwill and attention from libraries to trust MUSE as a source not only of the curated for-sale collections of books and journals that we're known for, but also for our free and open access content. Indeed, the numbers bear out that libraries are rapidly adopting open access MUSE content for inclusion in their own discovery layers, right alongside content that they have already purchased. At this time, over 900 libraries have now ingested the MUSE OA Books collections through Ex Libris Alma, EBSCO EDS, and OCLC WMS, more than double the ingestions from just 1 year earlier. And this count doesn't even include the number of individual librarians who may have downloaded our OA mark records from our site for manual ingestion. This is just an incredibly dramatic increase, likely driven by the pandemic and the same push for discoverability of free content that led to the free period. But this also tells us that libraries are independently making the decision to bring MUSE OA content into their institutional environment, signaling to their community that it's just as valuable as the rest of their carefully curated, purchased digital collections. But our investment in open access goes beyond growth by the metrics that I just discussed. Here are two examples of collaborative open access initiatives that MUSE has taken part in that point toward exciting new directions in the future. The first is Opening the Future, a new open access initiative from Central European University Press, developed with the community-led Open Publication Infrastructure for Monographs, or COPM, with the goal of creating a sustainable open access publication of frontlist content that's funded by library membership access to backlist content on Project MUSE. MUSE was first approached about this project in the fall of 2020, and by January of 2021, just a few months later, we had it launched. So in Opening the Future, libraries pay for membership fees to access backlist CEUP content on Project MUSE. This is CEUP content that has been on the MUSE platform for years, so MUSE was a great natural fit for this collaboration. This content was assembled into 4 packages based on subject, with 1 additional membership option for support. So libraries have options based on how they want to participate. And library membership is intended to fund 25 new frontlist open access books per year from CEUP. So this model really builds on the library journal membership models, such as Open Library for the Humanities and Subscribe to Open, such as from annual reviews, and also book membership models, such as Open Book Publishers and Punctum Books. This is a truly collaborative open access effort, only made possible with a series of partnerships and a goal of ultimately paving the way for more presses and libraries to embrace OA publishing. Additional partnerships included Lyrasis, who facilitate the library membership participation, OAPEN, supporting the hosting and dissemination of OA titles, and COPM, who not only drove the creation of this model, but who will, through COPM Work Package 3, work to establish documentation and a toolkit for helping others to adopt OA models as well. So while this experiment in OA is brand new, it's an exciting one, and it really signals a type of experimentation and collaboration that a true open access future will require. The last initiative I'd like to talk about this morning is a digital multimodal essay called Furnace and Fugue, Sound and Vision. Furnace and Fugue is a multimodal scholarly monograph from Brown University's Library's Center for Digital Scholarship and published by University of Virginia Press as part of their Studies in Early Modern German History series under the Mellon-funded Digital Publications Initiative. The full monograph, hosted by Brown Library, is a rich, digital interactive re-rendering of Michael Mayer's 17th century multimedia work, Atalanta Fugiens, that allows readers to fully explore the piece as never before. Discussion between Brown, UVA, and MUSE began last year about how MUSE might partner with them to help provide an additional route of discovery for this innovative digital work. Alongside the monograph, there is a series of essays that were created with the same rich presentation as the full work, and we decided that it would be a great idea for MUSE to host one of these essays. So, with close collaboration between Project MUSE's tech team, Brown, and UVA, MUSE hosted the essay Sound and Vision by Tara Numedal, mirroring the dynamic presentation from the primary site to increase discovery and demonstrate MUSE's suitability for digital humanities projects. This also initiated a digital humanities facet on MUSE's search browse for the first time, and we're excited and we expect it to be the first of many digital humanities works to appear on the platform. We want to help you achieve your open access goals. So please contact me if you have any OA projects in the works. We would love to talk to you about them and how they might fit on Project MUSE. I've covered a lot of ground here today. So to sum it all up in one nifty screenshotable slide, let's go through a summary. So books on MUSE remain strong and growing. Our new custom book collections model is launching this fall. It will enable more more collection sales for backlist content. And we will continue to create current year collections for frontlist books as before, asking for publishers for estimates and metadata ahead of publication, so the libraries can purchase them ahead of launch. If you've signed our new books agreement, you're all set for a number of great programs, including updates to EBA and open access terms. We've launched a number of new collaborative open access initiatives and are excited to work on more of them in the future with all of our publishers. And please contact me with any comments, any questions. We love talking with you. Honestly, this has been the best part of working from home, is just having all these conversations with publishers over Zoom. No question is too big or too small. Please email me with anything that you'd like to talk about related to books on Project MUSE. So now we will be ready to open up the floor for any questions. So I want to once again thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to talking with you.
Phil, thank you so much. That was, like you said, chock full of information and just really explained some really complex terms that we all are very familiar with, but you really did just an amazing job of putting it together. I just want to get to one quick question. Someone asked, what is EBA? And I wanted to make sure we got that question cleared up right away for that viewer.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so EBA is evidence-based acquisition. So essentially what happens is we work with the library to establish a package of titles that we give their users access to for a standard period, usually of about 12 months. And then so during that period of time, users at that institution have access just as anybody who might have purchased a collection of that content. And then at the end of that 12-month period, the library receives usage data and makes purchase decisions based on that usage data. So that is it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think you did a really great job of demonstrating the benefits of EBA. And, we talked a little bit this morning about the backlist and how the backlist kind of got a lot of new life from the free period. And I think that is one of the benefits of EBA, right, is the backlist sales that seem to be growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, backlist sales are especially strong in EBA, which shows that when users have access to that content, they want to use it, and and libraries want to purchase it when they see that their users are interested.
Right, and they've made a budget commitment, right? So that's really important too. So we've got that piece of sewed up as well for revenue. So that's really great.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a specific dollar amount that's committed, and they will buy that amount of content, regardless. And then they make those purchase decisions, as I said, in good faith based on what was used, as long as it's not already in their holdings otherwise.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you so much. Here's a specific question about thema codes. Do we also use thema codes next to the BISAC and BIC? And I think that was part of your presentation on the new book sales model.
Yes, yeah. So the subject code discipline mapping is obviously essential for these custom book collections functioning in the way that we envision. So we currently only ingest BISAC and BIC directly into our disciplines, but we are looking into other subject codes that libraries or that publishers might be sending us, and that would include thema, which in fact we have looked into before in our BIC mapping. So so the answer right now is that we're looking into that.
Awesome, thank you. Will the same metadata and delivery deadlines be in place for frontlist titles? And are frontlist titles eligible to be included in these custom collections? And if not, how much time are they eligible?
Sure. So yes, the frontlist deadlines that you currently have will remain in place for the time being. So that means that around August, you'll receive a form asking to estimate by subject about how many titles you plan to publish and send to MUSE in the following year. And again, that is because we do have a number of institutions that still prefer to purchase their frontlist content that way. But it's also true that the moment that any title launches, regardless of if it's in those frontlist collections or not, the moment that any book launches on Project Muse, it will be eligible for the custom book collections as well. Basically, when I use backlist to describe those, it really just means anything that has already launched on Muse. Whereas the way that we think about frontlist collections is these are titles that we're sort of selling before they're published, and we're making our best estimates based on the information that you give us to sell that to libraries who still prefer to purchase that way.
Okay, that's really great. And I think your graphs are really helpful, and hopefully our audience had a chance to screenshot them, or you'll also have a copy of this video afterwards. Let's go back to EBA just for a second. At what point after publication does a book go into your EBA program? Is there an embargo, and do you offer EBA usage revenue?
So there is not an embargo. So any title that's on the platform at the time that an EBA program is initiated with a library would be eligible for that program based on whatever that library's sort of specific program is, which might not, it might be a subset of titles on Muse, it might be all titles, it really depends on the library. And any revenue for that, for EBA sales, are based on the institutional single title price that you send us, and they're not based on usage. Although you can look at your usage at any time via the publisher usage statistics tool.
Great, thank you. So do most Muse publishers release books on Muse simultaneously with the print editions? And if not, what is the reasoning?
I think that the answer is that yes, most do, not all. Every publisher sort of has their own schedule and strategy for how they distribute books to various platforms. But it is true. So again, with frontlist collections, one of the main reasons that we're retaining that in the way that we are is that they still are popular with a certain meaningful number of institutions. So essentially, if you send us a book around the time that it launches, it's more likely to be sold in those collections, and that's essentially better for the book's performance on Project Muse to be included in those frontlist collections. So yeah, that's currently that is what most publishers do, and in fact, we've even had some situations where an ebook will launch before the print is released, depending on the publication date. So yeah, that is and that users expect to see content as soon as they can, as soon as possible as well.
That's great. Thank you for answering that so thoroughly. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about open access. You talked about the Furnished and Fused project that Muse launched just a couple months ago, actually. And someone is asking about the technology behind that project. Can you talk a little bit about how we put together that project and some of the features of it?
Sure. Yeah. So we worked very closely with the Brown and UVA teams, and our own tech team worked directly with them, sharing the files and the specs to essentially make the presentation on Muse line up as directly as possible with the presentation on the Brown platform. So there are all sorts of great features, including audio. There's images that can be zoomed, and it looks really nice. There's a dynamic scroll. There's footnotes that pop out in the same way that they do on the Brown platform. And while there are just a couple features that only make sense in the context of that larger Brown project that we didn't include, everything else is there. So I'd invite anybody to, it's open access, anybody can view it. I'd invite you to go to Muse and see that for yourself, and then explore over to the Brown Library website as well, because it's a great project.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also, I think those are projects that it's interesting to see how we can kind of move away from the containers of books and journals and kind of explore other kinds of content on Muse. So I think that's, I look forward to hearing feedback from publishers after they've had a chance to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Phil, do you think the experimental OA books model with CEU Press could be applied to journals with paid access to back issues funding for OA for current and future issues?
Sure. Yeah, and in fact, I think journals model, that was sort of the one of the inspirations for doing it with books. So yeah, absolutely. And again, there's the spirit of experimenting and collaborating in these experiments is I think key. Is really testing the waters and seeing what works and what can kind of lead to not just a project right now, but something that's sustainable, that we can look at 3 years from now and say, okay, wow, we're still able to publish OA issues by subscribing to backlist. So yeah, absolutely.
And I know Wendy will be talking about that in her closing today, so that's really great. So I think those are all the questions we have for you, Phil. Is there anything else that you maybe wanted to bring up that you didn't get to talk about earlier in your presentation?
That's a great question. I don't think so. Yeah, I feel like I covered a lot. I'm excited to have everybody here. It's a very different experience than talking to a room in Baltimore and seeing all our books publishers face to face. But I'm still glad to see so many of you here on the in the digital space. And again, I hope that anybody, if I didn't answer your question or if I didn't cover something that you are interested in, as I said, I'm more than happy to schedule a call with you and talk about it.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Phil. We're going to take about a 15-minute break. So we'll be back at 10:30 Eastern time with Liz Brown, who's going to talk about what's next for journals. So thanks so much, and we'll see you in just a little bit.